Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial on multi-AI agent systems. In this one, we are going to cover AUTOGEN Studio, which is developed by the teams at Microsoft. If you are a non-developer who's looking for ways to learn and deep dive into the world of multi-AI agent systems, then this tool is perfect for you. It's a low-code and open-source tool which makes rapid prototyping of multi-AI agent applications a breeze with its interactive and intuitive graphical user interface. So let's get started. So first, let's see what are we going to cover in this course. We'll start with the introduction to AUTOGEN Studio. Then we'll see how to set up the environment to begin using the AUTOGEN Studio using Conda and OpenAI. And then we'll navigate the Studio dashboard. Post that, we'll understand the skills, agents, workflows, and playground, which are the basic building blocks in AUTOGEN Studio. After that, we'll go over some workflow executions to understand some advanced techniques in AUTOGEN Studio for multi-AI agent applications. We'll go over 3 use cases for creating skill, generating PDF, and then generating a travel itinerary involving execution of multi-AI agents in a group chat. Then we'll see how to use an open source LLM with AUTOGEN Studio using Olama. And finally, we will launch the AUTOGEN Studio in a Docker container for safe code execution. All the prompts, the files, and the resources used in this course are uploaded in the resources folder for further download. So let's get started by first seeing what is AUTOGEN Studio. The folks at Microsoft created an open source framework called AUTOGEN for building LLM applications using multiple agents. It's a very powerful framework, but it's very difficult for the non-developer community to use it. This is when AUTOGEN Studio was born, which is a low-code interface powered by AUTOGEN. It is designed to simplify the process of creating and managing multi-agent solutions. It has a very intuitive interface and user-friendly platform that beginners can use to define and modify agents and multi-agent workflows. It is open source, and the code for AUTOGEN Studio is on GitHub at Microsoft/AUTOGEN. Now let's see what are the building blocks of AUTOGEN Studio. The agents or the AI assistants in AUTOGEN Studio can be created using 2 components, the skills and the models. The skills are the tools or the functions that the agents call in order to complete an action. For example, generating of PDF files, generation of pictures, connecting to a database, connecting to an API, and so on. The models are the brains behind the agents. These are the large language models that the agents connect to in order to complete the task. Once the agents are created, they can be integrated into what is called as the workflows. The workflows define the interaction patterns between these agents, which can be random or sequential. Now, once the workflows are created, they are called in the playground. Playground is where the actual action happens. The user gives the task to the workflow and sees the agents interacting in real time in order to complete the task and then see the outcome of that task in the playground chat interface. So now let's see what goes behind installing AUTOGEN Studio. There are multiple ways in which AUTOGEN Studio can be installed. One is using Anaconda and other using Docker. In this one, we will see how to install using Anaconda. Anaconda is an open source package that is used to run applications in an isolated environment. First, we'll go over the prerequisites and the instructions to set up the environment, and then we will see how to launch AUTOGEN Studio instance locally. All these instructions are also provided as part of the resources, so please go ahead and download and access from there. Now let's see what are the prerequisites. The first thing required is Python 3.11 version. If you don't have it currently installed, then you require that version to go ahead. The second is the Conda environment. So either you can go ahead and search Anaconda on Google and go to the website of Anaconda and download from there, or you can just use this link directly. There are two versions. One is the Mini Conda, which is a low weight version of Anaconda, which you can download and install, or you can go ahead and install the complete package of Anaconda. The third thing which is required is the LLM model endpoints and the associated API keys. So which LLM endpoint that you're using, for example, if you're going ahead with OpenAI or Azure or Gemini, or any of the open source models that have OpenAI compatible endpoint. In this particular example, we will right now use OpenAI endpoint like the GPT-4 model and the API keys associated with that. Now, what are the instructions to set up the environment? After downloading the Anaconda and installing it, we have to start the Anaconda PowerShell. This is like a command terminal. On that, we have to give this command to create an Conda environment. Conda create -n AUTOGEN Studio with the Python version of 3.11. So this will create a new environment called AUTOGEN Studio for the Conda. Now, after that, you have to activate the environment that has been created using Conda activate and then your environment name. In this way, example, it is AUTOGEN Studio. Post that, you have to use the API keys and set them in the environment. Now, if you're just setting temporarily only for the current session, then you can use export OpenAI API key and then give your API key there. But if you want to set the API keys permanently, like even after your current session ends, then you can go ahead and first, after activating, you can set the variable, environment config variable, using Conda environment config var set open API key, and then you can give your open API key here. After that, you have to deactivate the environment using Conda deactivate and then again activate your environment. So with this way, you will be able to set the LLM API key permanently and you don't have to set it again after you close your session. Post that, you can go ahead and install AUTOGEN Studio in this environment that you have created using pip install AUTOGEN Studio. After installation is completed successfully, then you can launch the AUTOGEN Studio using AUTOGEN Studio UI and then the port number. The port number 8081 is used by default. So even if you don't give this, it will launch on 8081. And if you want to specify the port explicitly, then you can give this tagline here and then with the port number here. After all this is done, you can go ahead and access AUTOGEN Studio at your local host http 127.0.0.1 8081. So on this particular link, you will be able to access the AUTOGEN Studio UI. Now let's see how to launch AUTOGEN Studio from the Conda environment locally. After downloading and installing the Conda, and after creating the environment inside the Conda, activating the environment, and setting up the LLM API keys, and after installing the AUTOGEN Studio inside this environment, now we are ready to go ahead and launch the AUTOGEN Studio UI. So for that, again go to the Anaconda PowerShell, and since I've already existed, but I've created the environment earlier, so I'll just activate the environment again. So Conda activate AUTOGEN Studio. This is the environment name that I had also given. Now I'm inside the AUTOGEN Studio environment inside the Conda. I will again now give AUTOGEN Studio UI command, AUTOGEN Studio UI. And I can give, this is not mandatory if you're not changing the port number from 8081. But if you're changing to any other port number, then you can go ahead and use this tag to change the port. Now after this, you can see the application startup is complete and the application can be accessed at this particular link from the localhost. Now we'll go ahead and go to this localhost, http 127.0.0.1 port. And now this is what the AUTOGEN Studio UI looks like. This is the AUTOGEN Studio beta version for building multi-agent applications. And here are the multiple tabs for the build and the playground. So under the build, you have the skills, models, agents, and workflows, which you can create using the UI. And then you have the playground section, wherein you have the session tab and then you have the chat interface. The session will save all your previous sessions with the workflows that you have interacted with. And this is a chat interface which will show you the current workflow execution and how the agents are interacting in real time to accomplish the task that you have given in this text box. And you can also change the theme from the sun and the moon tab to dark and light theme. So this is how you can go ahead and navigate the studio dashboard. Let's see the details of these particular functions and whatever is available in the next video. Now let's go over the dashboard in order to see the building blocks of AUTOGEN Studio in detail. Let's start with the skills. Under the build section, we have skills, models, agents, and workflows. The skills are the Python functions that agents can use to solve the tasks. Now consider that you have an agent and you have given it a task that requires the agent to connect to a database in the background. So for that, you have to provide a function here which also specifies the connection string and the database details and so on, which the agent can use while performing the task. In order to create a new skill, you have to go to new skill, give a unique name, a description, and if your skill or a function requires any secrets, for example, if you're using SERPer tool in order to access the web, search the web, then you have to give the secret key for accessing the SERPer tool here, and so on. So if you see here, this is a by default function which is available inside the AUTOGEN Studio for generating and saving the images. So this is a Python function, and once you have created the function, then you can go ahead and save the skill. And you can also use any other agent in order to create a function that you can save it here. So we will see this in one of the videos later on, how to use the agents in order to create the skill if you don't know how to program using the Python language. The second one, coming to the models. So models are the LLM models, the large language models that the agents will use in order to complete the task. Here, we will define which models are being used and what are the configurations. And they will be then used in the agents and the workflows going forward. So when you click on the new model, you are presented with what kind of models are supported currently by the AUTOGEN Studio. So we have OpenAI, wherein it's supporting OpenAI models and the other endpoints that implement the OpenAI API. For example, the open source models via the tools like Ollama, VLLM, LM Studio, etc. that provide OpenAI compatible endpoints. So in a later video, we will also see how we can use Llama 3.1, which is an open source model, via Ollama and connect it to AUTOGEN Studio. Now the second one is the Azure OpenAI and the third one is the Gemini endpoint. So for the purpose of this video, we are going ahead and using the OpenAI. Now if you enter this, you will see we have to provide the model name, the base URL, the API key and the description. So for the OpenAI models, because they are default models with AUTOGEN Studio, we don't need to provide the base URL. It will take it on its own. And the API key you already have provided when you were configuring the content environment. If not, then you can provide the API key over here. Okay. Now, regarding the model, so you can go to ChatGPT platform.openai.com and then you can see what all models are supported here for text generation and whatever your task is. And then depending upon your task, you can configure the models. Okay, so this is a list of models that are being supported here. And for the purpose of this particular video, we are using GPT-4 1106 preview model, which is a text generation model under preview. So again, if you go back here, and we have given these details and I've already provided the environment key in the background. So if I test the model, then it says model tested successfully. That means it was able to connect to the endpoint of the model and using the secret key that I have provided, and we are ready to use GPT-4 1106 preview for the particular agent that we are going to configure. So again, you can go ahead and save the model. Also, it's important to note that you can configure multiple models using multiple providers, multiple LLM providers, because each provider will have a different, capability. So depending upon what kind of tasks you are trying to solve, you have to configure the LLMs accordingly. Now that we have seen the skills and models, let's go and dive into agents and workflows. Now, under the Build tab, when you access agents, then you're presented with this screen. Agents are the AI assistants that can be configured inside AUTOGEN Studio and can be associated with the models and the skills that have been created. Now, when you click on New Agent, you will be presented with the different agent types that can be supported in AUTOGEN Studio. The first is User Proxy Agent, then Assistant Agent, and then the Group Chat. The User Proxy Agent is an AI agent that is representing the user, and it acts on the user behalf. The Assistant Agent is an independent agent that you can configure to perform the task you want to be performed. And the third one is a Group Chat, which is basically led by an admin. It will have a team of AI agents under it, which will work together in order to complete a task. Now let's go over each one of them one by one. So first is the User Proxy Agent. When you click on this, you will be presented with this screen where you have to configure the User Proxy Agent. You have to give it an agent name, then the description. Then this field is maximum consecutive auto reply. So what this means is that how many consecutive auto replies messages can be sent before the workflow terminates. Okay, so if you want the conversation between the AI agents to be a smaller conversation and not actually go into an infinite or a very long conversation between the LLM agents, then you can actually reduce this number to 5 or 6, and you can go ahead with using this number. But if you want the conversation to be a pretty long conversation, then you can use this number as a higher number. The next value is human input mode. So right now, by default, it is set to never, which means that when the user proxy is presented with a result from any other AI agent, then how often it asks for the user to provide a feedback on that result. So never means it will never ask the user to provide any feedback. There are two other values which are supported in the base framework, which is AUTOGEN. The first is the always and the second is the terminate. So always means whenever the user proxy receives an input from any other agent, it will always ask the human for a feedback on that particular result. And terminate means whenever terminate message or the chat is terminated, at that time, or the conversation is terminated, at that time the user proxy will present the final result at that time to the user for the feedback. But now, right now, if you see, this option is by default only set to never, and there is no other value here currently. But in the future, always and terminate will be supported because they are already present in the base framework, which is AUTOGEN. So this is never. And then system message is what more details you want to give to this agent to perform its task more appropriately. So because this is a simple user proxy agent, we will just tell it you are a helpful assistant and so on. Now let's go into the advanced options. So we have temperature, which is basically if you want different outputs for same kind of input every time, or you want creative outputs, or more hallucinations or sort of things, then you will increase the temperature value, to 1 and more, to 1 basically. But if you want factual inputs or similar kind of, outputs for every same input provided, then you will use a lower temperature value. Then agent default auto reply. So by default, what will be the reply the agent will give? So we can actually, so this is right now set to terminate. Now let me tell you a thing about terminate here in AUTOGEN Studio. So it is kind of a keyword which will help to end the conversation. Now you have to be very careful in order to associate this keyword with any kind of agent that you're using, because that agent has to be a deciding agent, head agent, wherein that particular agent, for example, if a lead or a manager is there, so that lead or manager can only give this particular word terminate in the reply, so that the conversation will be ended and the final result will be presented to the user. So you have to be very careful in using the word terminate in the conversations. Then the max tokens. So tokens is basically how the exchanges happen, with the large language models in terms of tokens only. So the more number of tokens are there, the charge or the cost will also go up. So if you're just prototyping, you have to limit the maximum number of tokens to a smaller number so that your LLM usage cost should not go to a higher value. And then final value is the code execution config. which is local, not Docker. So this means that whenever this agent has to execute the code, then which configuration it has to use. So if it is a local Anaconda environment, then you can give local, like right now we have it. If you have a Docker configuration, then you can provide the Docker configuration here to be used. And then if you don't want the code to be executed, then you can give the none configuration here. So this is how you will create a user proxy agent. Now let's go to the other agent, which is the assistant agent, which is basically an independent agent that you can configure to perform any particular task for you. So again, in the similar way, we have almost the same values here. So we have the agent name, the description, the max consecutive auto reply to limit the number of conversations between the agents, the human input mode, like when the result has to be presented to the user for the feedback, then the system message, and then the advanced options like the same temperature, default auto reply, max tokens, and the code execution config. Now let me show you a planned or a default agent that I already built in order to show you how you can use this agents. So for example, this is an agent that I had built, which is called a primary assistant, and what it will do is it will explain topics in detail using a PDF file output. Okay, so this is a task I want this agent to complete. And I've limited the max consecutive auto replies to 8. That means conversation will end after maximum of 8 messages. Human input mode is anyways by default set to never only. So this is like the result will never be presented to the actual user for the feedback. Now, if you see what is the system message provided, so it is a pretty long message. Let me just go over a few parts of it. So what I want this agent to do. So you're a helpful assistant that can explain topics in meticulous detail. The user will provide you with the topic, and your job is to explain the topic fully. Make sure you explain all the facets of this topic and how they work so that even a beginner student can use your explanation to learn the topic, and so on. So if you see this elaboration, this detail is very precise, and how you want the result. So make sure you structure explanation in a markdown format. So similar things. So how you want the complete details you have to give. So you will then use the markdown to PDF file converter that you have been given as a skill. Pass in the explanation in the markdown format and then generate the PDF file. And this is the final answer you will present to the user, and so on. So all these details are provided in very much detail, so that the agent knows at every step what it has to do. And if you see the final thing, the summary must end with the word terminate. So after the agent is done with its task, it has to reply word terminate to the user proxy, and then we will know that the conversation has ended and the final result can be presented to the user. If the user request is pleasantry or greeting, you should respond with a pleasantry or greeting and then terminate. So all these details have been provided to this particular agent. And then if you see, these are the temperature and max tokens and the code execution config, because we are using Condal as a local environment. So this is how the assistant agents, basically these assistant agents can be configured. Now let's see an example of a group chat. Okay, so I have already created a travel group chat here, and let me go through it for you. So this is a travel group chat which has been created, and the description is it is a group chat agent configuration, and you can actually reduce the number of replies to again very minimal, so that your LLM cost usage doesn't go very high, and the conversations are, because we are just seeing this for the prototyping purposes, so the number of chats have to be very less. Number of auto replies. Human input mode again never, because that is only the one which is supported right now. System messages, you are a group chat manager, so it knows that it is a group chat manager. Now the speaker selection method. So what is it is how many agents this particular group chat has been provided with, right? So if you see this agent name, whatever we have given here, so that is actually the admin name as well. So this agent is the admin, and how many maximum round of conversations it can have between the different agents, that has been provided. So if you want to limit this number also, so you can give it a very limited number, so that it doesn't, again, your LLM usage costs don't go too much higher, and there is a long chain of conversations will happen between the LLMs otherwise. Now coming to the speaker selection method and allow repeat speaker. So what happens is that this particular travel group chat admin will give a chance to the other AI assistants in this team, right, which have been configured here. So it will give a chance for them to speak. Now, how their selection, like how it decides which speaker has to be selected next in order to give its opinion or perform the task, right? So then this is a speaker selection method. So it is either auto or round robin or random. So it is in the automatic mode or round robin. Round robin means the order in which the agents have been provided in this group. In that fashion, each agent will be selected in order to speak. And then random is again based, like there is no other rule, it is just randomly selecting the agents to speak. And allow repeat speaker means that allow the same speaker to speak multiple times in a row. For example, your task is being worked upon by planning assistant right now. So if you set this to true, then the planning speaker will be able to speak multiple times before giving a chance to the other speaker in the row. So this is how you can actually configure, depending upon your task, how you want it to be completed and so on. So this is how you have to configure the agents. And before going further, let's see what are the other options here. Again, the same things, temperature and default auto reply, maximum tokens, and the code execution config. Now, once these configurations are defined, then we go to the agents. So what agents are linked here? So we have linked 3 agents to this group chat. One is the planner assistant, then is a local assistant, and this is a language assistant. So whenever I have given a task to plan a travel itinerary, I want the planner assistant to present a brief plan first. Then the local assistant should provide, based on this plan, some other inputs which are specific, which only local assistant will know, and based upon the dates of the travel and so on, so that it will provide the feedback based upon the plan which planner assistant has provided. And then the language assistant, so again it will review the plan which is provided by the planner assistant and provide any modifications which might be needed in order to, which are very language specific or ethics specific or local culture specific and all. So these things will be provided again as a feedback to the planner assistant before it presents the final answer to the user proxy. So this is how this travel group chat will work, and we will see this detailed example a little later. Now you have to also link the LLM to this. So again, we have this whatever we had configured. So we had configured the GPT 4.1106 preview, and we had tested it also. So that particular agent is connected here. And we have not connected any skill because we are not using any function at the background task to perform. And again, going back to the primary assistant, if you see here, these are the models which are linked to this individual assistant. So the same model has been linked to the individual assistant as well. And this is a skill. So because we had asked this particular assistant to use the this particular skill, if you see here, we had asked it to use the markdown to PDF converter to use to feed whatever content it has generated into this PDF file, so that the PDF file can be generated. So dependencies to run the markdown to PDF file converter. So this skill we have provided here. Right, so markdown to PDF converter we have provided as a skill, so that this agent, when it executes and returns the output, it will first use this particular skill in order to convert, generate the PDF file with the whatever output it has created, and then final result will be the PDF file which is generated. So this is how you can link together the model, skills, and the configuration for an agent to work on. And also you can upload, if you like, have a JSON configuration, you can upload the agents which you have exported here directly and reuse them. Now coming to the workflows. So we have seen how the agents use the skills and the models, and now we will see how the workflows will use the agents in order to complete a particular task. Okay. Now workflow will be basically 2 types. One is sequential and one is the chat autonomous. So first, let's see what is sequential. Suppose that you have an approval process which cannot move unless first level is done, lower level is approved, then it will go to a higher level, that higher level will approve, or a loan approval process or similar like that, right? So for those tasks which are dependent upon the order in which the AI agents execute, they have to be a sequential workflow. For example, if you just read through this includes list of agents in a given order. Each agent should have an instruction and it will summarize and pass on the result of their work to the next agent. So similarly to a loan approval process or any other approval process, if each agent will work upon approval based upon the instruction it has been provided, and it will summarize whether it has been approved or rejected, and then the other agent, the next agent in line, will take that summary and then work upon it. So this is how the sequential workflows happen. Now coming to the autonomous workflows. So autonomous workflows are, it will have an initiator and a receiver. So initiator is usually the user proxy, which is, representing the user, and the receiver. Receiver can be an individual assistant, like a primary assistant, or it also can be a group chat. So you can have an initiator as a user proxy and the receiver as either a single assistant or group of assistants, which is led by a group admin. So this is how the autonomous chat works. So let me show you an example of both of them, which has already been configured. So now this we have a default workflow. So this is basically again a continuous autonomous chat for which we have a name, a description, and the summary method. Okay, so summary method will basically mean that when the final result is presented to the user, how you want the final result to be driven. So basically if it is none, that means whatever no summary, whatever is the result, you just present it like that. And last means whatever last conversation, the last result of the conversation was, you present that as the summary. And LLM means that you let the LLM, you make an LLM call and let it summarize all the conversation and present that summary to the user. So this is how it is configured, and usually we choose last so that no extra LLM cost is made, and whatever last result of the conversation was, that is presented as a summary. And now again, if you go here, you will see the agents. Now this is a autonomous chat, so we have an initiator and a receiver. So initiator is the agent that initiates the conversation. Okay, so as usually the user proxy is the one who is representing the user. So we have user proxy as the initiator. And this now, in this, if you can see, this is a default assistant. So this is a single assistant that is being configured as a receiver here. Now let me show you another one, which is a group workflow, wherein again the basic details will be the same, like the workflow name, description, and summary method. So these you can configure. And here if you see, we have the initiator as a user proxy, but the receiver here is now travel group chat. So now this is a single agent which is a user proxy, but this is a group chat which is a group of agents which is led by the group admin. So this is how the workflows are created. And again, the third one is a similar method. So these are the agents, initiator and receiver. This is a single agent, primary assistant, which has a particular function of explaining the topic using a PDF file output, for example. So this is how the workflows are created using the agents which have already been created. So now that you have created all these skills, models, agents, and workflows, let's go to the playground. Okay, so now if you see here, playground has two parts. The first is the sessions and the other is the chat interface. Okay, now if you have created a workflow and you want to create a new workflow and you want to interact with the, interact with the workflow. So if you click on the new here in the session, so you are initiating a new session to interact with provided workflows. So now here it asks you, please select an agent workflow. So out of the drop down, you can select which workflow you want to work with. So for example, I go with the default workflow. And then you can give, a name here, or whatever name you want to give. So for example, I'll say default session. And I'll just say, go ahead and create it. So if you see now, this is now listed here as a default session, and I have a blank playground to play with. Okay. Now, depending upon what kind of agents are used in this particular workflow, I will give a task to be solved here. So for example, if I go and see in the default workflow what agent I have given. So I have given this default assistant, and what is the function of this default assistant is, it is an assistant agent. Now let me go to the default assistant and what it is specializes in. So this particular assistant specializes in solving the, providing a code suggesting a Python code for something based upon its skills. So now let me ask to create some Python code. Okay, so I can say share code or generate code for basically searching web and returning or whatever. So now if I give this, then it will actually go ahead and perform that function for me. Okay, and then provide the output in the following window. Okay, so we will see all these kind of examples one by one in the next sessions. So, and if you can also close the sidebar and see the playground in the full view, or you can just see this session in the sidebar and so on. And you can also save them the sessions in the gallery for to be saved for future references whenever you want to reuse them or relook at them and so on. So this is the basic interface with AUTOGEN Studio provides. Now in the next videos we will go through creating one skill and doing one workflow or seeing the workflow execution for a travel group chat, and also of how a PDF file can be generated by agents using a single agent and so on. So yeah, now is the time for real action. Let's explore some use cases and how the workflow execution happens in AUTOGEN Studio. Now, the first use case that we are covering is to have an AI agent provide a detailed explanation about a given topic and also generate a PDF file containing this explanation as output that we can use for later reference. What all topics will be covered while we are executing this use case? First is the creation of skills and saving in AUTOGEN Studio, creation of primary assistant, that is, an independent assistant or AI agent for topic explanation using the skill which is generated in the first step. And the third part is the workflow execution and agent user proxy conversation, how all this happens. So let's see in AUTOGEN Studio. For that, let me go to the AUTOGEN Studio UI. And if you go to the agents, you can see that this primary assistant has been created, which is the purpose of this particular agent is to explain topic in meticulous detail using PDF file output. That is the use case that we are considering. And if you see that what all details we have provided to it is you are a helpful assistant that can explain topics in meticulous detail. The user will provide you with the topic and your job is to explain the topic fully. Make sure you explain all the facets of the topic and how they work so that even a beginner student can use your explanation to learn this topic. Make sure to structure your explanation in the Markdown format, which is similar to HTML. You will then use Markdown to PDF file converter, which is a skill that you have been provided. Pass in the explanation in Markdown format to this function and then generate the PDF file. This is the final answer you will present to the user. The libraries and dependencies to run the Markdown to PDF file converter should already be installed, so try without installing the dependencies first. At each point, do your best to determine if the user's request has been addressed. If the request has not been addressed, respond with code to address it. If a failure occurred, example due to a missing library, and some additional code was written, example code to install the library, ensure that original code to address the task still gets executed. If the request has been addressed, respond with the summary of the result. The summary must be written as a coherent, helpful response to the user request. Example, sure, here's your PDF file and the PDF file should be done. And the summary must end with the word terminate. If the user is pleasantry or greeting, you should respond with a pleasantry or greeting and then terminate. So now if you see, we have provided in very much detail about what is the ask for this particular agent, what we wanted to do in step-by-step explanation. And now if you see that we have asked it to use a function, Markdown to PDF converter, but we don't know if suppose that I'm not a programmer and I don't know how to write this function, then what I can do is I can go ahead and use another agent to create this particular function for me first. Okay, so now let's first go to that particular agent that can help us do this. So this is a default assistant that I've created. This is also an independent assistant. So how you have to create is using the new agent and then the assistant agent. Both the default assistant and the primary assistant are this type of assistant agent only, which is an independent AI agent. Now, coming back to default assistant, which will help me to create the skill which I require the other AI agent to use. So this is an assistant agent. And if you see here, you are a helpful AI assistant. Solve tasks using your coding and language skills. In the following cases, suggest a Python code in Python coding block or shell script in SH coding block for the user to execute. When you need to collect the info, use the code to output the info you need. For example, browse or search the web, download or read a file, print the content of a web page or a file, get the current date or time, checking the OS. After sufficient info is printed and task is ready to be solved based on the language skill, you can solve the task by yourself. When you need to perform some task with code, then use the code to perform the task and output the result and finish the task smartly. Solve the task step by step if you need to. If a plan is not provided, explain your plan first. Be clear which step uses code and which step uses your language skill. When using code, you must indicate the script type in the code block. The user cannot provide any other feedback or perform any other action beyond executing the code you suggest. The user can't modify your code, so do not suggest incomplete code which requires users to modify. Don't use a code block if it's not intended to be executed by the user. If you want the user to save the code in a file before executing it, put the file name inside the code block as a first line. Don't include multiple code blocks in one response. Do not ask users to copy and paste the result. Instead, use print function for the output when relevant. Check the execution result which is returned by the user. If the result indicates that there is an error, then fix the error and output the code again. Suggest the full code instead of partial code or code changes. If the error can't be fixed or if the task is not solved, even after the code is executed successfully, then analyze the problem, revisit your assumption, collect additional info you need, and think of a different approach to try. My God, I know this is a very big prompt, and these some of the prompts are already provided in AUTOGEN Studio, and I will also provide these prompts which we are discussing as part of the resources, so you can download and use them in your agents. And so if you have seen here, it is very much provided in detail what this assistant agent should help in providing the code blocks in Python, right? Or the shell script to install or perform whatever tasks are required. So this particular agent is designed to perform this particular task. And if so, other details, we have already discussed all of these details in the previous lectures. So we are good to go ahead. And if you see now the model which is associated, which we have already configured, and we have added that particular model here. And since we are, if you want to associate any other skill with this, then we can actually add that. But right now we don't need it. So we can actually remove it because this will be generating a skill. This is itself not using any other function to create or generate that. So now let's see how to create a workflow first to use this default assistant and user proxy as part of representing the user, and how we can let them to interact in order to first create the skill which is marked down to PDF converter. Okay, now let's go to workflow. And now this is a default workflow. So again, if you go to new workflow, and out of these two, because this is an autonomous chat, we are not executing multiple agents in any particular order. So we will go ahead with the autonomous chat only. And this is an autonomous chat agent workflow, wherein this is a workflow configuration. So we have just named it as a default workflow. Summary method, if you remember that whatever, the last conversation message was there, it will be presented here as a summary if we select the last, but in the conversation. But otherwise, we can also select none or LLM, which is none means it will not present any summary, and LLM means it will again make a LLM call, and LLM again will generate a summary of all the previous conversations that have happened in this workflow, and that particular summary generated by the LLM, that will be presented as part of the summary in the last conversation or the last update to the user agent. And coming to the agent part, whatever default assistant that we have created, which will help us in providing the skill, that particular assistant we have added as a receiver. And the user proxy will always be the initiator, because this is the user proxy's agent, which is representing us, the user. Okay, so this will basically initiate whatever query we give to the chat. First, the user proxy will transfer it to the receiver assistant, and then assistant will work on that and will provide something, and then this kind of interaction will happen between both of them. So now once this workflow has been created, let's see how we can use this workflow in the playground. So when you're coming to the playground, you have to click as new here, and then you have to select the workflow that you want to work on. So you are working, suppose for example, on the default workflow. You can give the session name, and then you can create the new session and then start asking it to generate whatever you require it to generate, the particular code or the skill. So now since we have already executed it, I've already executed it once, this OpenAI skill for PDF file creation from Markdown. Let's see what inputs I gave it to it and how for the responses generated. So the first thing I wrote a message here in this particular text box: write a generic Python function that takes Markdown as input and creates and returns a PDF file and saves it in the current folder wherever the AUTOGEN is running. Okay. So now, after waiting for around 56 seconds, okay, then I got this. So if you just go here, you can see this time here is 56 seconds, which all the agent messages took. And again, we will go into the interaction between the agents in a while. So let's go from top down. The final summary which was presented to me was this. From the agents: excellent. Since the execution succeeded, you now have a Python function that can take Markdown content as input and create a PDF file, saving it in the current folder. To use this function, you can write a small script or directly call this particular function, which is generated from a Python interpreter or another Python script, passing the Markdown content you want to convert. Here is an example of how you might call this function. So all these details are provided, to me as a summary. And this is, the function which is generated, and it is provided to me how I can call this function. Save this example usage in a file and run it to convert the sample Markdown content to a PDF file. The PDF file will be saved in the current folder, and script will print out the name of the PDF file. If you have any specific Markdown content to convert or any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, if everything is clear, that concludes our task. And if you see here, it has responded with terminate. And user proxy will take this as terminate or ending message, and then final response will be returned to the actual user from the user proxy. Now, this was a summary. Now let's see what are the interactions happened between the agent messages. So if now again I go to this drop down, the user proxy, which was the initiator, it passed the same message which I wrote in the text box to the assistant, which is the receiver. Write a generic Python function that takes Markdown and returns a PDF file and saves in the current folder. Okay. Now, how did the default assistant reply to the user? To create a Python function that takes Markdown as input and generates a PDF file, we can use Markdown package to convert Markdown to HTML and then use PDFKit to convert HTML to PDF. First, we need to ensure that these packages are installed along with WK-HTML to PDF, which is a dependency for PDFKit. Here is the plan. So now you see it is actually planning each step by step in order to provide the final function to the user proxy. So here is the plan. First, it will write a shell script to install the necessary packages. Second, it will write a Python function that takes a Markdown content as input, converts it to HTML and then to a PDF file. And third is save the PDF file in the current folder. So you see there is a plan which is generated by the default assistant. Now, let's start with the installation of the necessary packages. So if you see, this is the first step that the default assistant has performed, and this is a sh script, the shell script that has been generated by the default assistant to solve this task, which involves installation of the necessary packages before calling the function. The second part is writing the actual Python function. So this is the actual skill that we can use later in order to save it to the AUTOGEN Studio and use it in our the workflow that we wanted to actually go ahead and create. So if you see, this is a proper Python function which is generated and ready to be used. And it also elaborates, to use this function, you need to import it and pass the markdown contents as string. The function will return the file name of the created file, PDF file. Remember to execute the shell script first to install the necessary dependencies before running the Python code. Now, all this is now sent back to the user proxy. User proxy has executed whatever code it provided. Basically, it tried to execute the shell script first, and because this is a Windows machine, and there was the previous version of PowerShell was used, and there was a space in the name as well, so it could not execute this particular shell script that was written by the default assistant. So it said that exit code has failed, and I was not able to execute it, and it returned the error also. What error was there? So now default assistant is saying to the user proxy, it seems that there was an issue with the execution of the shell script, possibly due to an incorrect command or environment. Now, it realized that since you are on a Windows machine, the installation of WKHTML to PDF cannot be done via shell script. So you need to download and install this package manually from the official website. So seeing the error message, it was able to identify that this was a Windows machine on which it was trying to execute this particular shell script, and there was an error in execution of that. So that's why it has now detail suggested that this has to be downloaded manually. For the Python packages, other Python packages, you can still install them using the following shell command. So it again gave a few commands for the user proxy to execute for the other Python packages. And after you have manually installed this particular package and run the buff command to install the Python packages, then you can use the final Python code to convert Markdown to PDF. Save the Python code in a file named markdown to pdf.py and run it with your markdown content. If you encounter any further issues, please let me know. I will assist you accordingly. So you can see the level of detail interactions which is happening between the user proxy and the default assistant, as if it was an interaction really happening between the user and a agent, right, an assistant. So now user proxy has executed these Python steps, Python code instructions that was sent again, because it was a Windows machine and it had to execute it separately. So now it has said that I have executed them successfully, and now it says that okay, now you have executed it successfully. So now it is just that you can use this particular file and as a skill and go ahead with the usage. Okay, so again, this is the final response to the user proxy again by the default assistant, and it says that terminate. So now whatever code has been provided and it has been accepted by the user proxy, and finally the default assistant has responded terminate. That means end of conversation. Now user proxy will return all these files that have been generated, if you can see here. So this is the shell file that was generated, which having the install in the markdown PDF packages. I'll show in a bit. This is the temporary code which was generated as part of the conversation. This is the final markdown to PDF file function, basically the Python function that was generated, that we can straight away go ahead and use it in the skill. So I will show you that also in a while. And if you see here, I've opened the shell script that was created, and it clearly represents the instructions which were required in order to install the packages before running the Python function that was created. So if you see the details of it, it is like very detailed with the comments, and all the instructions are clearly provided. And all these things you can actually go ahead and see in the Android AUTOGEN Studio that will be created under your username. So if you see here, all these files are generated. So this is a markdown to PDF Python function that was finally created, and you can use this as a skill. Now coming back to build and skills. Now with this markdown to PDF converter, you can actually go ahead and copy and paste that function here and name it with the description. So I've actually created it already. Let me show you. So this is a markdown to PDF converter function that I created, and I just renamed it to markdown to PDF converter here. And rest of the things are still the same, which was generated by the skill, by this particular default assistance that we have just seen. And this is the description of the particular skill. So you see that not being a developer, I was able to still generate the skill or in the Python function that I want my other AI assistants to use when they are performing their task. How good, right? And also you could have uploaded this as upload skill in the Python function and directly from here as well. So now this markdown to PDF converter has been created. Now let's again go back to our agents and let's see the other agent that we wanted to create, which will provide us about the explanation of the topic, right? Which will be using the skill that we just created. Now again, going back to the primary assistant, which we again created using this new agent and assistant agent, this particular agent type. And if you again go and see the details here, so explain topics in meticulous details using PDF file as output, right? And we have actually read this before, but now let me again show you how we have used it. You're a helpful assistant that can explain topics in meticulous detail. The user will provide you with a topic and your job is to explain the topic fully. Make sure you explain all the facets and how they work so that even a beginner student can use your explanation to learn the topic. I want to show you specifically this particular part. You will then you make sure to structure your explanation in the markdown format, and you will then use this particular skill. It is also, we have told it, markdown to PDF file converter, that you have been given as a skill. Okay, pass in the explanation in the markdown format and then generate the PDF file, and this PDF file will be the final answer to the user. So now this is the complete prompt that I will also be sharing. And it will have to work like, sure, here's your PDF file. PDF file should be done. The summary must end with the word terminate. Again, we are giving this particular agent the authority to terminate the conversation when the task is done. If the user request is pleasantry, you should respond with a pleasantry greeting and then terminate. All other details are similar. We have not, so code execution config again is local because we will be executing the code locally here. And again, if you convert to the models, we have used the created model here. And now the skills part. We have linked the newly generated skill that we had generated, markdown to PDF converter here. And this is now ready to used in the workflow. So this primary assistant, we will use in the topic explanation workflow. So if you see here again, this is an autonomous chat. Let me show you from new workflow. If you click on autonomous chat and then you can configure this new workflow, because again, this is the conversation between two agents, the user proxy here and the primary assistant, which will help us to generate the topic details and provide the results in a PDF file. So this is a primary assistant that we are using, right? And initiator is the user proxy, which will represent the user. Now coming to the workflow configuration, this is simple, straightforward, the name of the workflow, the description of the workflow, and the summary method. So instead of having a separate LLM call, I'm just using the last returned conversation as a summary, which is provided. So now, once this workflow is created, now you can also test workflow once here, but let's go to the playground directly and use this workflow. So again, we can go ahead in the playground, click on new, and then select our topic explanation workflow from here. Last time we had used the default workflow to generate the skill. Now this time it is the topic explanation workflow, and then you can name this session and then create a new session. Now let me show you already created session, which was using this workflow here. So I had given the task, please tell me about multi-AI agent systems and what tools support their development. So this was a task which was given to this particular primary assistant agent by the user. And what is the summary which I got is, sure, here's your PDF file explaining the multi-agent systems mass and the tools that support their development. You can download it using the link below. So it has provided me this link where I can download the PDF file from about this topic. If you have any more questions or need further assistance, feel free to ask and then terminate. So this was the final message in the conversation. So this was presented to me as the user. Now let's go to the agent messages, right? So this particular execution took me 1 minute and 18 seconds using the OpenAI model. And now again, if you go into the details of this, what is the conversation that has happened? The user proxy told to the primary assistant, please tell me about the same message which I gave to start the conversation. The same message has been passed by user proxy to primary assistant. Please tell me about multi-AI agent systems and what tools support their development. Now, If you see, primary assistant now has responded to the user proxy and providing all the details in the markdown format, which we had asked it to do. So this is the details about the multi-agent systems, the definition, the characteristics of multi-agent systems, the components of multi-agent systems, the applications of multi-agent systems, the tools for developing the multi-agent systems, the libraries and the languages that can be used, simulation tools, communication and coordination, and then the conclusion. And finally, it says, let me convert this explanation into a PDF for you. Please wait a moment. So after that, the primary assistant again comes back to user proxy and provides this particular content as to the markdown to PDF skill that was created earlier. So now this is provided, this particular content in the markdown format to this skill. And now the user proxy is the one who is actually executing the code. The primary assistant has provided the content and provided which function to be used. And then the user proxy is the one who is actually executing the code on this content. Okay, the markdown to PDF converter function that we created. Now, if you see here, it is showing that the execution has succeeded. And this is a result of the execution, PDF saved to this particular PDF file. Now, the primary assistant takes that input and sees that, okay, the execution has been succeeded, and then returns this output. For example, if this execution would not have been succeeded, then primary assistant would have given some feedback in order to, user proxy to help execute the code successfully. Now, finally, the primary assistant is saying to user proxy, this is the final message that we saw above. Here is a PDF file explaining, and you can download it from here. Okay. And now if you come down, you can see that this is a skills.py it has used. So this is a skill markdown to PDF converter that was used during this particular execution. And this is the final PDF that was generated. Now, if I go back and see, if I click on this, I will be able to see this particular in a PDF format. Right? And also this PDF will be saved in the current folder of the AUTOGEN Studio, wherein this particular execution has happened. So you can go there and then reference it for later purposes. So if you see here, this is how the interaction happens between these agents to solve the problem that we have given to them. And one more important point that can be seen here is the profiler part. Apart from the agent messages part, this is very important when you're actually using, for example, even if you're using OpenAI, some cost is included there. And this is a good method to check how many tokens are generating and how many, calls are being made. And if you see here, it is giving you all the how many tool calls were done and what is the code execution status with no code and success. So if you see, this is a success part at this particular time, and this is a tool call at this particular time by the primary assistant. And if you see here, these are the LLM costs. So 6098 tokens were exchanged during this particular execution, and this was the cost which was incurred during this particular execution. So all these details are also provided as part of the operations, and this is further being refined, and you will be able to see much more clarity and details in the future and AUTOGEN Studio versions as well. Okay, so yeah, this is we have covered basically the assistant agents, the creation of skills, and how the workflow execution happens in the playground, and how the agents and the user proxy interact with each other to give you the final results. You can apply this and see if you are a teacher, for example, and if you want to generate a worksheet based upon a given topic. Just imagine that you can just download this, give a topic to it. It will generate you a sample of questions in a PDF file that you can just download it and or save as a soft copy and send it to your students. And there are multiple like vast use cases that can be generated like this. So this is just a thought behind this, and we will see the group chats in the next session. Now let's cover some advanced topics in AUTOGEN Studio using another workflow. Here the use case is to have an AI agent team consisting of multiple AI agents provide a travel itinerary, refined with details about local events and language culture recommendations. What all topics we will cover here? We will create 3 AI agents: planning agent, language assistant, and the local assistant. Then we'll create another group chat agent, which is a travel group chat, which will comprise of these three agents as a team. And then we will see the workflow execution and interactions between user proxy and this travel group chat agent. So let's go to the AUTOGEN Studio, and we are under build agents. And as we told, we will be seeing three particular agents first. The planning assistant, which is the planner assistant here, then the language assistant and the local assistant. So these three AI agents will be part of the travel group chat, which will finally send us the itinerary that we are looking for. So again, these three agents are the type of assistant agents, which is independent agent. And if you come here to the planner assistant, what details we have provided here is, it is a planner assistant with a description, and the max consecutive auto reply to limit the number of conversations, it is reduced to 8. And again, the system message, which will define how exactly this particular agent will perform. You are a helpful assistant that can suggest a travel itinerary for a user. You are the primary coordinator who will receive suggestions or advice from other agents. Which are the other agents? Local assistant and language assistant. You must ensure that the final plan integrates the suggestions from these agents and team members. Your final response must be the complete plan that ends with the word terminate. So we have given this particular assistant the authority to terminate the conversation, and when it figures that all the responses have been taken into its consideration and final plan is ready, then it can return with the final plan and then respond with the terminate, so that the conversation terminates and the user is presented with the final answer. And if you go to the advanced options, they are particularly the same options because we're not executing any code. So the code execution config is none, and the temperature is set to the lowest value to avoid hallucinations, and the maximum number of tokens is also reduced to limit the cost usage. Now coming to the models, so we are using this particular model which is configured in the models for its use, and there is no skill associated with this particular agent. So this was the planner assistant, which is a primary assistant for this particular travel plan. Now let's go back to the other assistants, which is a local assistant. This is also a local assistant agent. You are a local assistant that can suggest local activities or places to visit for a user and can utilize any context information provided by the planner assistant. You can suggest local activities, places to visit, restaurants to eat, accommodation, etc. You can also provide information about weather, local events. If any specific travel dates or months are provided, then search for any relevant local events during that period and suggest. Do not provide information about language. You can provide information about the local area, but you cannot suggest a complete travel plan. If the plan already includes local experiences, then you can mention that plan is satisfactory with rationale. Okay, so this is basically, it will review the plan which is provided by the planning assistant, and if we'll see that any other local events information is missing that it thinks it should add, then it will provide its feedback on top of that for the planning assistant to consider. So this is the basic function of this particular local assistant. Coming to the models, we have linked the GPT-4 model that we have configured, and there is no skill attached to it. Now coming back to the language assistant, which is similar kind, but it will focus on replying with the language related or culture related parts to the travel itinerary. Now again, this is a language assistant. You are a helpful assistant that can review the travel plans, provide feedback on important or critical tips about how best to address language or communication challenges for the given destination. If the plan already includes language tips, you can mention that the plan is satisfactory with rationale. Okay, so again, it will just provide its feedback on limited things related to the language and the communication challenges for any given destination. Advanced options are still the same. There is nothing changed here. And then the models, again, this model is linked, which is a GPT OpenAI model, and there is no skill attached to this particular AI assistant as well. So we have seen these three assistants, which will be added as part of a AI agent team to the travel group chat. Now this travel group chat is created using this particular type, group chat type. And let's see now what the contents of this. This configuration is a little different. The agent configuration, agent name is a travel group chat, description is group chat agent configuration. Maximum consecutive auto reply, you can again limit this number to very less so that the conversation does not go, beyond much transfers, interactions. And you're a group chat manager in the system message. Speaker selection method is set to auto. If we want in a particular order, then we can actually define it as round robin. And the admin name is this group chat, travel group chat. Max rounds between the number of rounds of conversation between these particular agents. So this particular is that particular value. And allow repeat speaker. If you want one speaker to speak more than once during the conversation, then you have to set it to true. Now, because in our case, we are having the planner assistant to first create the plan and then receive the feedback from the local and the language assistant, and then again provide the final plan. So we will have to allow the repeat speaker to true. So we have set this to true. And again, now this is the important part here. So if you see now, 3 agents are linked to this particular group chat. We have linked a planner assistant, the local assistant, and the language assistant to this particular group admin. Models used is the same model that we have used for the AI assistants, other assistants, the GPT-4 1106 preview, and there is no skill attached to this particular as well. And if you see, this is the order in which they are given. If you are using round robin method of speaker selection, then each speaker will be given chance one by one to speak in this order. Now, let's integrate them into the workflow. So we have defined these 3 assistants, individual assistants first, and then define the travel group chat. And user proxy we already have, which will be a simple agent which is not linked to any particular model, and this is just acting on the user behalf and executing any code which it is, if it is provided by the other AI agents. Okay, so now coming to the workflow, going to the travel planning workflow. So again, this is an autonomous chat because we are not, dependent upon one by one performance. Like each particular in a particular order, we don't want it to be done. And we've already defined that planner assistant has to initiate first. So we don't want the sequential chat. We are going ahead with the autonomous chat. So now the travel planning workflow. If you see, it has a name, the description, and the summary method. Again, we have set it to last method of the conversation. And then agents. Now, initiator and the receiver. The initiator will be the user proxy, and the receiver will be the travel group chat agent, which is a group chat agent that we just created with the 3 primary assistants as the AI agents team. Now, closing this, let's see how the execution happens. So in the playground, if we go to new and select the travel planning workflow, and we can create a new session here. So once we create the new session, you will be able to see that you are actually able to type in the message. For example, I have given this message that I want to visit Dubai. I have given the destination, I have given the duration for 8 days, and I have given when in October 2024. This is just a sample of what kind of travel itinerary I want the travel team, basically this particular AI agent team, to provide with me. Now let's see the response of the agents based on the valuable input from local assistant, and this is a final reply from the agents. Based on the valuable input from local assistant and language assistant, here is your final refined 8-day itinerary, travel itinerary for Dubai in October 2024. Arrival in Dubai, exploring old Dubai, modern Dubai, adventure day, cultural experience, then Abu Dhabi day trip and day 8. And now if you see, there are special considerations as well here. So which is participate in the Dubai Fitness Challenge if it aligns with your interests. And check out the GITEX Technology Week if you're interested in the tech. These are special considerations. Again, the language tips are also specially provided. English is widely spoken, but learning a few Arabic phrases can enhance your experience. Use your right hand for greetings and exchanges. Be respectful of the cultural norms regarding greetings and public behavior. Remember to check for any updates on events and attractions as your travel date approaches. And don't hesitate to reach out for further assistance and terminate. So this is the final message which was provided by the planning assistant or the team. So now let's see what are the interactions that have happened between these agents. So when I type this message in the text box, the user proxy, which is acting on behalf of me as a user, it sent the same message to the chat manager, the travel chat group. I want to visit Dubai for 8 days in October 2024. Now, as you remember that we had defined the planner assistant, which will give an initial plan. So the planner assistant, based on this particular task, it provided an initial plan to the chat manager. To create a comprehensive travel itinerary, I will coordinate with other agents to ensure we cover all aspects of your journey, including local attractions, cultural experiences, and language considerations. Let's start by outlining a basic itinerary and then we'll refine it with input from other agents. So it defines a basic itinerary currently. And then if you see there is no special considerations passage here right now. It is saying now let's define this with suggestions from local assistant and language assistant. Local assistant, can you please provide insights on special events, local customs, additional attractions that should be considered for this itinerary? Language assistant, could you offer advice on any language considerations or useful phrases that might enhance the traveler's experience? Now, after receiving this message, the local assistant sends this message to the chat manager. As your local assistant, I can provide insights on special events, local customs, and additional attractions for your trip. Here are some suggestions. So it has now highlighted some special events that are happening in the month of October when the user is visiting this particular destination, and some other local customs and the additional attractions which planner assistant might have missed. So it is adding those to the itinerary, and the weather considerations also it has provided that what is the kind of weather and what you should consider. Remember to check closer to your travel date for any other new events or changes to the existing ones. Ensure your trip to Dubai. So this is the feedback which is provided by the local assistant. Now coming to the language assistant, now it responds again to the chat manager. As a language assistant, I can provide you with some language tips and useful phrases. While Arabic is official language, it is highly cosmopolitan with English widely spoken. Here are some tips. So it gives some language tips here and some useful Arabic phrases here, and also some cultural communication tips here. Your travel plan seems already to be well structured. With the addition of these language and communication tips, you should be well prepared for your trip to Dubai. Enjoy your travel. Now, based upon this all information, Planner Assistant now refines the itinerary, and based on the valuable inputs from local and language assistant, here's your final refined 8-day travel itinerary. Now, it has taken some parts of those interactions with local and language assistant, and it has added the special considerations and the language tips as part of the itinerary. And this response is the final one, which we are able to see in the chat interactions above, right? And now, if you see here, the profiler, how many tokens were exchanged, and basically the no code was executed. So no code executed and no tool call was there. And if you see LLM cost associated, so planner assistant exchanged 2421 tokens, local assistant 995, and language assistant these many number of tokens. And if you see here, we have this many USD which was spent in this particular token exchanges with the LLMs. So this is how you can use the travel, basically the group chat feature in the AUTOGEN Studio. And there are more refinements coming up. So this is really exciting, feature to be used, and many multiple use cases we can think of on the same lines. Previously, we have seen some use case executions on AUTOGEN Studio where the AI agents that we created were connected to OpenAI's GPT-4 model. Now in this one, let's see how we can connect these AI agents to an open source large language model. If you go to new model, we see that in addition to the OpenAI models, we can also use open source software models via tools like Ollama, vLLM, LM Studio, etc. that provide OpenAI compatible endpoint. Now these are some of the open source tools that let us use some open source large language models on our local machine. Now let's see how we can use Ollama to run Meta's Llama 3.1. For that, let's go to ollama.com. Here we see what all models are supported by Ollama. So for some of the models are Llama 3.1, 5.3, Mistral, Gemma 2, and so on. Now, in order to use Ollama, you have to download the executable from here for your respective operating system. After downloading the executable and installing it, then you can open the app for Ollama. When you open the app for Ollama, you will be able to see the background processes for Ollama running in the task manager. When you see this background process running, after that, in order to interact with Ollama, you have to go to your terminal and then type Ollama. Here we can see all the available commands that can be used with Ollama. Now let's see what all models are supported with this version that we downloaded. So if I say Ollama list, Then it gives me Llama 3.1 is supported. Let's now interact with Llama 3.1, which is from Meta. So I'll write here Llama run Llama 3.1, which is supported by this version. So now it is trying to start the Llama 3.1 on this machine. Now it is ready to accept the message on Llama 3.1. If I say hi, and let's wait for the response and see that the connection is done. So it is responding with how's it going? Is there something I can help you with? Or would you like to chat? And then again, it's waiting for another message. So now we have established the connection on our local machine with Llama 3.1. Now let's see how we can connect it on AUTOGEN Studio. Let's go back to AUTOGEN Studio, and using the OpenAI model type, we will configure the Llama serving. So this is I've already created using the OpenAI type. So this is the model Llama 3.1, and this is the base URL that you have to provide. In Llama documentation also, we can see that the default port on which this model will be served is 11434-B1, which is version 1. So you have to give on this local machine, that is 127.0.0.1, which is a local host. So you have to give this endpoint in order to access Llama 3.1 through AUTOGEN Studio here. Then you can give another description here, whatever description you want to provide here. And for the API key, just give a random API key because there is no secret key for a model running on the local machine. So just give a random API key, which is a number. Now, after giving all these details, you can go ahead and test the model that our AUTOGEN Studio is able to access this model on this endpoint. So it is trying to send the connection and check the connection, and after checking it, it returns that model is tested successfully. So now we are ready to use this model with our AI agents that we create in AUTOGEN Studio. Let's close it and now go to agents, and now whatever agent you want to connect with and use open source model against it, you go to the models for that agent, and then you can go ahead and add the particular model that you just created. This is Llama 3.1 is now linked to the agent. And you can use multiple models here. And as told earlier, that it will try to first use the first model. If it is not able to connect for some reason to that particular model, then it will try to connect to the other model which is listed and linked to this agent. So this is how you can use the open source models with AI agents on AUTOGEN Studio. Now, just one more thing to note here is that when I try to use the open source agents, the execution time was way longer than as compared to the OpenAI's GPT-4. And also there was a lot of performance issues because it was the speaker, the format which we describe was not properly followed, and there were a lot of repeat speakers in between, and the flow was not very proper. So I think it will take some time for a better performance when we are using the open source models with AUTOGEN Studio. But yeah, this is how you can connect it. Just as a refresher, what we just learned is running LLM on local machine using Ollama and connecting it to the AUTOGEN Studio. Ollama is an open source tool that serves as a powerful platform for running LLMs on your local machine. And these are the installation steps that we went through. We downloaded Ollama from ollama.com or from the GitHub, and then we install using Ollama setup.exe. To list the LLM models which are supported by Ollama, we ran this command Ollama list. In the terminal, then we ran Ollama run Llama 3.1 in order to start serving of Llama 3.1 on the local machine. And this is the particular endpoint that we provided in order for the AUTOGEN Studio and the AI agents in the AUTOGEN Studio to access this particular open source model on the local machine. And other similar libraries or tools which AUTOGEN Studio is supporting are LM Studio and VLLM. And similarly, you can configure the open source models on any of these tools as well. So previously, we have seen how to launch AUTOGEN Studio using Conda environment, which helped us to create isolated environments at the Python level. Now, if we want to create the abstraction at the operating system level, which is a recommended method for enterprises for safe code execution, then Docker is recommended. Docker is an open source containerization platform that allows you to build, deploy, and manage containerized applications for safe code execution. Now, what are containers? Containers provide a way of creating an isolated environment, which can be called a sandbox, in which applications and their dependencies can live. And the Docker images are the ones which help to create these containers, which have abstraction at the operating system level. Docker images are read-only templates that contain instructions for creating a container. It is a snapshot or a blueprint of the libraries and dependencies required inside a container for an application to run. So what are the steps involved when we are launching the AUTOGEN Studio using Docker? We first have to install the Docker as a desktop app, then build the Docker image for AUTOGEN, and then run AUTOGEN application from this Docker image, which means we will launch the container for AUTOGEN with the Docker image that we created. Now let's go on and see what are the steps involved. If you are running the Docker app on Windows, then first you have to install the Windows subsystem for Linux by typing this command in the terminal, wsl install. So this will install the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is required for you to run Docker on the Windows machine. Now, there are two extra steps which are involved when you're using the Docker on the Windows machine. First, you have to check for the virtual machine platform, whether it is turned on or off on this Windows. For that, let me quickly show you. So you can go and type turn on Windows features on or off on the run command here. And then under this, you can search for the virtual machine platform, whether it is selected or not. If not, please select that for the Windows machine in order to run the Docker on the Windows. And the second part is that you have to check for the virtualization is enabled or not by going in the task manager and clicking on the performance. And on the on the bottom side, you can see this virtualization. So this has to be enabled. If it is not enabled, go ahead and enable this one here in order to install the Docker on your Windows machine. Now, after these three steps, you can go ahead and install the Docker app from www.docker.com. Now, once this is installed, after that, we have to create a Docker file which is used to generate the image, Docker image. So now I have also provided the complete Docker file for creating this Docker image for AUTOGEN in the resources. And let me just show you what this Docker file looks like. So this is the file which has also been provided in the resources. You can just take it from there and put it in a folder where we'll use it to build the Docker image later. And if you see this, so it is using some commands in order for giving the user directly the permissions and setting the work directory to home AUTOGEN and the user to AUTOGEN. Then this is setting the environment path variable to this. And here you can give your OpenAI API key if you're using the OpenAI model, and if you're using Azure or Gemini, give the respective environment variable here. And then just without any quotes, just give the key here. After that, it is loading the popular packages, like it is installing the PyAutogen, then AUTOGEN Studio, whatever is required to build this Docker image for AUTOGEN Studio. And then after that, it is exposing the port at 8081. Okay, so after this, we can actually go ahead and use this Docker image through the Docker app that we have just installed in order to launch the AUTOGEN Studio. So now once this Docker file base is ready and you have put it in a folder, then what you have to do is you have to, again, let me show you the steps. So after downloading and installing the Docker for Desktop app from this, and then using this dockerfile.base and adding your LLM API key, after that you start your Docker app. Okay, whatever you have just installed, the Docker Desktop app, you have to start it. So at this point, the Docker is installed. So now let me show you how the Docker app looks like when started. So this is my Docker for Desktop app, which I have just started. Now, once this is started, what you have to do is you have to go to the terminal, and wherever you have stored your Docker file.base, which also I have provided as part of the resources, you go to that folder, home folder, and then run this particular command. Okay, so what this will do is this particular command will build the image and tag it with the name AUTOGEN Studio. So it is building the image and tagging it with the name AUTOGEN Studio, and it is using dockerfile.base to build this image. Okay, and make sure you copy from till the dot at the end, so that the Docker image is built from home. After that, once this Docker image is built, then again you have from the home container, just run this final command, which is docker run Automation Studio at the port 8081. So it is using the Docker image with the name Automation Studio, and it is running it on the port 8081. Okay, and this will launch the container for Autogen Studio. So let me just go ahead, and first of all, I have to go to the home folder where I have stored this Autogen basically this Docker file.base. So I will just go to that home folder first. Sorry, so I have to just go CD and then change to the home folder. And now once this is done, then I can go ahead and copy this command from here. This is also provided in the resources. And I will just like the Docker, because I've already started the Docker app, so it will recognize this Docker command. So Docker run at the port 8081, the Autogen Studio image that I have already created with the other command that is provided above. So now when I do this, it will launch Autogen Studio at the port number 8081. So if you see the 0.0.0.0, this means that this particular app can also be accessed from a public endpoint from outside. So just right now, we are just going to access it locally. So let's go to HTTP and then localhost, or I can use this 127.0.0.1 also. And then if I just do this, now you can see that the Autogen Studio app is launched from the Docker container, which we have just launched. So this is how we can use the Docker for using the Autogen Studio, and this will enable the safe code execution whenever we are using our AI agents to execute some code, because all this code is generated by LLMs, right? If you remember from our previous examples, first we have created skills using the LLMs. So they have generated some code and we have used that code as a skill, and then we have let that other agents to use that particular skill. So if we are dealing with a lot of large language models generated code, we have to be sure that we are running all this inside a container so that it doesn't affect our operating system. It is in a very OS level abstracted environment. So this is how you can use the Docker.